Kia ora koutou katoa. Welcome everybody to this community research webinar, which is about co-design and community development, hosted by me, Jan Hind, and with Kaye-Maree Dunn. And she will be joined by Rangimārie Mules, Pekepo and Sophia Beaton. We're looking forward to a fantastic session with you today, which should be fun and informative.
Kia ora, Jan. Tēnā tātou katoa I te whānau, kia koutou ko tai mai no ngā hau e whā, tēnā tātou, kia ora tātou katoa. What a beautiful privilege to be here and to create space for our stunning colleagues who are Māori practitioners in the co-design space. One of the core questions that is really important for us to consider is, how do we inject humanity into the design of our program and services, and what makes Māori co-design unique, special, and create much deeper relationships as a result of this mahi? So without further ado, I have the brilliant pleasure of introducing my dear friend, my whāngai whanaunga, Rangimārie Mules, who's going to take you on a bit of an overview and a journey to help set the scene for the rest of our wahine that we'll be listening to today. Kia ora tātou.
Ai ata Māori e koutou. Ko Rangimārie Mules tōku ingoa, he uri tēnei o ngai tahu o te Aotearoa, aha ko tēnā I tipu ake au ki hokianga whakapau karakia I te taha o Pangaru o Papata. I am here today to provide a kōrero around the bigger concepts around Māori development and co-design. If we can get my slide presentation up. So I want us to explore these three concepts, which is Māori, co and design. Next slide, please. So when we look at the word Māori, where's our next slide? Oh, yeah. When we look at the word Māori, to deconstruct it and understand the whakapapa or the place this word comes from, it actually means normal or natural, common or ordinary. But actually when you scratch the surface of that, it also means without restraint, free, clear, or intelligible. So when we look at Māori development, it's about understanding that we create space for our people to be without restraint, to be free and able to articulate themselves within a clear and intelligible way. Here's our next slide. Yeah, I can't quite see it. Yeah, there we go. But the reality is that Māori, when it's used well, it's a term that unifies us, but when it's misunderstood, it can actually homogenize quite a diverse group of people. And so we look to people like Jury to give us an understanding, to articulate it in a way that we can understand the complexities of Māori realities, and that we can't have single definitions when working in Māori development. There are a range of lifestyles, there's a range of experiences, lived experiences, and understandings of self and culture. Next slide, please. When I work with Māori communities, a lot of what I hear is that design is not new, and design lives within our whakapapa, and that our whakapapa helps to build connections between practice and meaning and action and theory. Next slide, please. Keeps disappearing. And so this is an example of how mai iwi ngaitahu use our land and our whakapapa to a place like Aoraki to then guide our design process and our way of connecting to place, whakapapa and history. And so there's our maunga on the right, and then on the left is a map of how we might actually connect our hapu and our iwi and what we call Māori into a unified understanding of self, history and culture. Yeah, next one, please. The next word to explore when understanding design and co-design is this word co, when it actually means to be joint, mutual and common. Next slide, please. which is a convergence of worlds. So it's about creating space for worlds to come together equally, and to ignite a Māori that is exciting, is disruptive, and creates new energy. Next slide, please. And at the core of that is a redistribution of power. So at one side of it, it's about innovation. Yes, it's about looking forward and development and advancements. But on the other side, it's about understanding realities, and that is a plural thing, and that worldviews and histories, inequalities and self-advocacy, language and humility are all things that we hold not at the tip of our tongue. Yeah, next slide. So it is about creating a space where we can tuku mai and we can tuku atu. We can create spaces of reciprocation, a shared understanding, but most importantly, we work hard on an equal distribution of power and value in people's voices. Next slide, please. So it's very important when we work in Māori communities, with Māori communities, that if you're in an organisation who has an idea about how we want to create social impact, is that we set conditions for design to be enabled. And here's a list of some conditions, like human values. We have to be driven by human values. We need neutrality. There's be safe to fail, and creating that safety. We're exploring clarity from incredible complexity. We must change our mindset from being fixed to being open to growth. And it is about the process and not necessarily about what the product is, or letting the product drive our actions. Next slide, please. And so this is an example recently in Kaikoura where the conditions were set, and this was the community driving their own consultation into a beautiful piece of art. But actually the feathers are all the community's voices about what they celebrate about their own community. So if we set those conditions, our design tools, our products go to a whole nother level. Next slide, please. The last concept that I'd like to talk to today, just to set the scene before Sophia and Crystal give you some really concrete examples, is design. And design is a set of tools and processes that help us solve complex problems. It helps explore creativity, iteration, and it really pushes us beyond just written word. It pushes us to understand visually and verbally, and using our senses and our emotional intelligence to drive towards deep understanding of worlds. Next slide, please. So design allows us to gain access to hidden worlds of user experience, where verbal interviews can sometimes allow articulate people to tell you about their lived experience. Design tools can help you dig deeper into things that aren't so explicit. Assumptions, worldviews, values, beyond just behavioural things and things that we can easily articulate. Next slide, please. So it is a set of tools, it is a process, and it gives us frames to work within. Next slide, please. And often we will see that it's a step-by-step empathise, define, ideate, prototype, and test, when the reality is it's incredibly messy. It really pushes you as a practitioner to be to engage in emotional intelligence, to be incredibly reflective on self, as well as your organisational interactions. And so the reality of being a co-designer is that it's incredibly messy, and to be comfortable within that chaos. Next slide, please. Some examples of tools that can be used are profiling, and this is a way that we can use visual aids to amalgamate data and help us design for collectives or information that we gather, to understand the culture and the context that people exist in, the values that drive them and the motivations, some of their barriers. And then if we're looking at a product-based design tool, then we can look at details like technology use, their ideas of health, where that can help inform the product. But these kind of profiles help us amalgamate data into visual cues where a range of people can come and design around those experiences. Next slide. Oh, where we're up to. Yeah. So this is another example of looking at that whakapapa, and that it is an ecosystems approach where we understand all the players and all the networks at play, how we may travel through this design process and meet new people. And so this is an example of us mapping all of our hononga, and in a way it's whakapapa to within the project itself. Next slide. And just to finish off, an example of our mythology, our understanding of design from mai rano, from our stories, from our mātauranga. Maui is often used within the design process because he had challenges, and he was cheeky, haututu, and overcame through innovative techniques and testing. Next slide, please. And so you can use our mātauranga as a way to free our people to explore innovation in a way that actually articulates our worldview. And this is an example of Māui tiki tiki a taranga being a tool, a mythology, a narrative that frees the minds of our people and our rangatahi to explore and be okay to be haututu within this process. So what was, when this rangatahi first started exploring that piece of land, it was just an empty piece of land, but as he understood the kōrero, he could start looking at the world beyond the tangible. I think I'll leave it there because I'm probably going over time, and we can go into more depth about that. So koina tāku mō tēnei wā, ai ka huri atu ki a koe, Kay.
Wow. Hai marika te kōrero i te tuahine. We just traversed multi-universes and the Māori mind, and then stepped out of it and wove into design thinking and how that connects to Te Ao Māori as well. So I got really tingly and excited by the kōrero. So what we will do is that after we've had our presentations, which will be 5 minutes each, we'll have time and space for questions and answers. So we'd love to open space for them from you as well. But beautiful kōrero, thank you. I now have the privilege of introducing our sister, Sophia Beaton, who's come from LifeWise. And the important aspect of her mahi is coming from an environment of community development, particularly with council, and now driving some of her thinking from this lived experience and applying that in her role and working with whānau that are right at the edge of our society. So e te tuahine, Sophia, nau mai haere mai, the rākau is yours.
Nā mihi nui ki a koutou. Mō kaitahu me ka te māmoe aho. It's such an absolute privilege to be here with these amazing women today, and I'm really happy to present on the work that we've been doing with LifeWise. So I work for LifeWise, which is an organisation that, among many other things, supports people who are experiencing homelessness. And in June last year, I was brought on board to lead the co-design of Housing First in the Auckland City Centre. And so what I'd like to do today is just talk about the process that we use to develop Housing First using co-design, and to really highlight how, as the Rangimārie has just talked about, the co-part of co-design is really about enabling people who you're designing the service for to really be a part of that process. So I just wanted to talk through the ways that we have done that. Next slide, please. So in designing Housing First, we really wanted to bring on people as part of the project team who had lived experience of homelessness. And this photo here is of 4 amazing men who have all had experience living on the street, and who have all participated in this long journey of designing Housing First. So we have John Heta, Aotearoa Hawk, Rob Smith, and our Rangi Carroll, who unfortunately passed away last year. But these 4 guys were part of the beginning of the process. So next slide, please. And the process was about designing Housing First. And Housing First is an international model of responding to homelessness that, instead of just kind of managing the problem of people being on the street, it provides rapid access to housing and then provides support for people to remain in that housing. And so our challenge was, how do we take this international model and implement it in our very unique New Zealand context, our very unique Auckland context, and even kind of more defined than that, our Auckland city centre context. And so we brought together a project team. Next slide, please. And our project team was made up of those 4 men that I just introduced before, as well as people from senior management positions in government, MSD, Housing New Zealand. We had practitioners on the ground from Auckland City Mission, Lifewise. We had people from all varying levels in this project team. And so we all worked together in a 6-month process. Next slide. So co-design has kind of the 2 double diamonds, and the first diamond is about finding the problem, and that includes 2 processes: understanding and then defining what the problem actually is. Next slide. So our project team went out and we spoke with people who have lived experience of homelessness, and the purpose of that was to understand their experience of housing. And so this is where we have our kind of first, our next kind of where you bring in people with the lived experience. So we have our 4 guys who are going out and doing the interviews along with the rest of our project team, but we're also engaging with the community that we're actually going to be providing this service for. Next slide. And through that process of understanding, you're not just letting go of traditional models of understanding either. So you are actually understanding the big data. So it's important to have your big data as well as your qualitative data. So you're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. You're incorporating all of the knowledge that you can muster. So here's just some kind of information here that we gathered from what we knew already from the Auckland City Mission and Lifewise. Next slide. And as Rangimārie pointed out, another way of bringing people into this process is through the creation of personas or profiles, as she called them. And so you're able to really build empathy with other people who are going to be supporting the creation of the service itself. And it's a way, these personas are a way of bringing people's stories into and being able to share them without actually giving away people's private information. So it's a really important way of bringing people, those people with lived experience, to the table all the time. So when you're designing, you're always coming back to these people. Next slide. And then the second part of that double diamond is the finding the solution. So the first part is understanding the problem. The second part is finding the solution. And there are 2 parts in this, the ideas and testing. And again, it's an amazing opportunity to bring in more people into the process. So next slide. For us, we had a series of ideation workshops where we brought in, again, people from across different organisations, people from with lived experience of homelessness. We had these huge hui where people came up with multiple ideas, and you have people sitting all at the same table, so you get this cross-section of ideas and you get this cross-pollination where people with lived experience sit with senior managers, sit with practitioners, all coming up with ideas, but based on the very thorough knowledge that you've gathered through the understanding phase. Next slide. And all throughout this, those 4 guys with lived experience of homelessness that I introduced to you before are all completely in there at the table, being a part of our project team, really driving this stuff. So they were part of creating those personas, and they facilitated tables at our ideation workshops. And then the ideas that come out of that, it was really our team with lived experience who really drove this part of it, so the development of prototypes and then going out with the community and testing. So here you see Rob and Mātuarangi out at the Auckland Central Library testing the ideas with people again. So you're constantly bringing people on board and you're constantly engaging. Next slide. So one of the things that I just wanted to quickly point out as well is when you're doing this testing and creating your prototypes, it's really important to go and test with the community, because you have all these assumptions about what ideas you have and what ideas you think are going to work. So one of the design challenges that came out of our understanding phase was that there are people where methamphetamine contamination had been a big cause of evictions in the past, whether that be from a friend or someone coming in, and whatever it was a big problem. And what we wanted to do, one of the ideas that came up was to create, you'll see on the left here, an image of what we've called this kind of a meth unit, a bit like the galleries that they have in Canada, safe spaces for people to be able to use heroin. So looking at this harm minimization approach. That was one idea. And then another idea we had was to do monthly regular testing. And when we took this out to the community and tested it with people who did use meth, what we actually heard was quite surprising. So next slide. What we heard is that people, the idea that we thought would be the goer, the one where that works in other parts of the country where you would have a safe space where you could use, actually was completely disregarded and thought it was a terrible idea by the community. And the idea that they actually thought was the best idea was the regular meth testing, which was completely surprising and not something that we would have learned without actually engaging with the community and having these really upfront conversations with people. Next slide. And this is my last slide, and I guess this is the place where I talk about our kind of key learnings. So the four guys that we engaged in this process were already leaders in the community, and that really helped us to be able to engage and network with people. So those 4 guys, not only did they contribute through all parts of the process, but they also were able to connect in with the rest of the community. So when it was time to pull those ideation workshops together, they could bring the whānau together, and they did, and they were amazing. And they could easily, when you're going out to doing those empathy interviews, they already have relationships. They can build those connections much quicker than we can. And they did, and they were fantastic. So bringing in people who are already leaders in the community is really important. We also provided small but regular financial support to those guys. So it meant that one week they might only be coming to a 1 or 2 hour meeting, but they would still be getting that regular support. And it gave them a bit of, I think when I've spoken with them about this, it gave them that extra security just to be able to participate in the process. So it's important that we koha people for their time. We also made sure to build in extra support as well for them. So after every project meeting, we would have a hui to be like, what did you guys think about that? Was there anything that, you know, came up that you didn't quite understand? Were there any questions that you wanted to take back next time? Just really making sure to build in that time for the guys to really be supported. And some other big learnings was that the wider project team, many people had to reframe how they operated. So there was a really kind of good example is there was a change of language. So before the people were there, people were referring to people as clients or they're homeless. But with the guys being there in the room, that whole languaging had to change. And so, and that's translated into now where the team who are delivering the service don't refer to people as clients, they're whānau, because that's that, and that came through extremely strongly from the guys and their presence in the project team. And I guess the other, the kind of last thing was the 4 guys were the holders of hope for the project when the rest of the project team were feeling like, oh, this is just another thing where we sit around a table and try and figure out the solutions. But those guys really held out the hope for the project, and I think without them, our Housing First wouldn't be anywhere near as successful as it's being now. So just to reiterate that including and engaging people who you are going to be designing for is so incredibly important, and doing that on multiple layers and multiple levels. Yeah, kia ora.
Wow, kia ora tātou. That was amazing, Sophia, on, again, another range of levels, and really loved how we worked in with Rangimārie's setting the frame and enabling us to look deeply into the elements of Māori co-design, and then how that landed in your stepping into empathy, to really step into the shoes and the lived experiences of the whānau that you're working with in our communities. And I started out this kōrero around injecting humanity into design, so it's really beautiful to see how you've done that effectively. So kia ora, Sophia. Now we're rounding out to our final guest speaker for today, and that is our beautiful sister Crystal Pekepo from Toi Tangata. E te tuahine, kei a koe te rākau.
He mihi kawana ki a koutou ngā mātāwaka o te mutu. Kua hono mai ki tēnei werero. Koira te kupu hau mo te webinar. Mahi awaha nō reira tēnei te mihi atu ki a koutou. Ko Crystal Pekepo tēnei no Ngāti Kahununu, no Ngāti Wara, no Ngāti Tāne hoki. So if we can just go to our first slide, and I'll just give a brief background about where I'm from. I work for an organisation called Toi Tangata, which is an agency that communicates mana enhancing messages to empower whānau to achieve and excel in physical health and well-being. Our team works hard to create meaningful connections and contribute positively to the continuation of whakapapa as specialists in positive health and well-being. Can we go to our next slide, please? My role here at Toi Tangata is a kaimahi in the workforce development, co-design and community research, currently based in Waiwhetu, Lower Hutt, in Te Whanganui a Tara. Next slide, please. In 2016, Toi Tangata were invited to lead co-design for Māori in the Healthier Lives Challenge alongside Auckland, Massey and Otago University researchers. So the kaupapa was to develop an intervention M-Health tool against non-communicable diseases such as cardiovascular disease, diabetes, alongside Māori and Pacific Island communities. The opportunity to give life to this kaupapa alongside whānau has been humbling, to say the least. And I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank all our whānau who have participated and contributed throughout this research kaupapa. Gaining insights from whānau is never an easy task. So what I'm about to share with you is a model, a Kaupapa Māori model that's been used to assist that process in gaining insights and empathy. Can we go to the next slide, please? So Te Heke Ngā Nui is the model I use to navigate whānau wellbeing. And it's a 3-step process of change, challenges and goals. It enables that pūrākau or kōrero tuku iho to become the facilitator and assist whānau to bring their narratives and experiences through the Te Heke Ngā frame. So when we look at change, we envision Hawaii. Hawaii being the idea of our people leaving the Pacific Islands. Some factors of why they left was famine, warfare, and overpopulation. So navigating that concept into our modern world, whānau participants are able to think about some contributing factors in their current state of well-being that they may wish to leave behind or change. Challenges or resources come through Te Heke Ngā, which is the middle picture there. And Te Heke Ngā is the waka journey. So the kōrero of our people traversing the great ocean of Kiwa, it wasn't an easy journey. And our people had their resources, their tohunga, their values to guide them and keep them resilient. Using that concept in our modern times is being able to consider what are the possible challenges that could hinder the journey. How would our whānau identify these tohu or these triggers? And what resources may they need or values they must uphold in order for that journey to be a rewarding journey? And lastly, Aotearoa, te tukunga iho, the outcome. What does that endpoint look like for our whānau participants? If we can move to the next slide, please. So one of the insights gained from this empathy tool, Miki, I quote, "We need to feed our hinengaro not with food, but with mātauranga. We need to feed ourselves with knowledge. If we don't feed ourselves with knowledge, ki te ngoikore te hinengaro. If it's koretake, you'll go ka wiwi ka wāwā." So how might we create a tool for whānau that enables mātauranga Māori? If we can go to the next tool, please, the next slide. So from these insights, we were able to develop an intervention mobile app through a Te Ao Māori lens. Ola Ora is the name of this app. And currently we aim to trial this research among communities throughout the country in 2018. Next slide, please. The app has been designed with functions using Te Reo Māori, Tā Mason Jury's Te Whare Tapawhā, with pockets of mātauranga Māori to assist whānau on their hauora journey. Next slide, please. Wero is the concept of whānau setting up personal wero for themselves or creating an engaging wero as a whānau collective. So one of the common themes from this kaupapa is whānau have a more enjoyable experience exercising collectively. Next slide, please. The opportunity for whānau to engage and learn more around whakapapa of kai and why, and also activity ideas they can use when creating their wero is another functionality of this app. Next slide, please. And lastly, the idea of collecting mātauranga Māori-based rewards, where they have an understanding, or whānau have an understanding in the whakapapa and uses of that particular tohu. So a lot of the design and the functionalities of the app came through the common themes and common kōrero that whānau were wanting to engage with that can assist in their hauora journey. So that is an example of using pūrākau or metaphoric kōrero to assist in the process of whānau engagement in mahi auaha. If we can go to the next slide, please. So I'd just like to leave you with this beautiful kōrero from Moana Jackson to consider that may influence your creative thinking towards co-design through a Te Ao Māori lens. Our notion of time is whakapapa based, a series of never-ending beginnings, a notion of time that turns back on itself to bring the past into the present and then into the future, a notion of time that recognises the interconnectedness of all things. Pūrākau is the narrative that carries those stories of time. Pūrākau carry our culture. Pūrākau carry our whakapapa. Pūrākau carry our mātauranga, our knowledge base. Pūrākau carry the accumulated wisdom of our tipuna, our ancestors, that constitutes our connection for the descendants that will follow. Nō reira, koe rā noiho, a tēnei te mihi atu ki a koutou. Ngā mihi.
Wow. Ka mau te wehi. Kia koutou, ngā wahine toa, e hapai ana ngā whānau, ngā hapu, ngā iwi, I roto I tēnei mahi whakahirahira. Too much. I've just got the vibe and the witty because the kōrero today has been absolutely amazing. So thank you all for your stunning contributions to this kōrero around Māori co-design from different dimensions. Again, Rangimārie helps set the frame of what does it mean for Māori co-design. Sophia shared with us the opportunity to really get into the shoes of the whānau that we're serving and the process and the steps and the techniques that we can learn from, how to do that really well. And then we landed in how you can take co-design pūrākau, which is our unique stories, our history, and apply that to something as amazing as an app to support whānau wellbeing and physical activity. So I'm absolutely blown away, and so are our team. So kia koutou, ngā wahine toa, ngā mihi kauatu kia koutou. So now we're going to move into the second phase, which is our question and answers, and also reflection with the last moments that we've got left, which is around 20 minutes. And so if you've got any questions that you want to pose to our stunning wahine practitioners, please feel free to post those on our Facebook page, and our team will fire that back to us live. But what we'd really like to ask each of you, ladies, and starting with you, Rangimārie, is what are the, I guess, in your design practice, what are kind of the top 3 things that work well, and what are the 3 challenges that you have faced in your mahi? And very briefly too.
Kia ora anō. The top 3 positive things I see with co-design is a lot more empathy in how we use information and data. Coming from a bit of a research background, data is really important, but data can really dehumanize people's lived experience. And so what co-design does is acknowledge that quantitative data has a place, but qualitative information and true lived experience and empathy can add something much more rounded, realistic, and deep in our practice. I think the other things that I have seen is that people's voices who are often silenced come to what's that? Oh, am I muted? Oh, and so we're actually giving a voice back to people throughout the process. The last thing I'd say about better practice is that co-design is a tool of validation for Māori thinking. That mātauranga Māori is already cyclical. It already can be open to iteration, to change, to a human-centered approach to development. And so co-design, what I have seen is that it affirms what a lot of our communities already know, but haven't had the tools to or the articulation to be able to practice it. Some of the barriers or things that haven't worked so well is making sure that we build capacity throughout the process. So like Sophia talked about, we can't function on the assumption that everyone has the same amount of voice or the same volume of voice. So being really, really just a really good eye for detail around exactly how do we build that equality of power, that equality of voice, and making sure people have the right skills to do that. The other barriers, I think, is that often we get really outcomes driven, and we set the parameters really early on in this process that are our own measures of success, and sometimes we're inflexible, and we don't allow for the process to take us through the unknown, because actually it's when we deconstruct our own assumptions that we find the beautiful, disruptive, and we discover things that we don't know yet, and we should be open to not knowing, but when we don't want to let go and we don't do the background work on ourselves as individuals within our organization, that reflective practice, making sure empathy and human values at the core, then we block ourselves out from that unknown. As a designer, you want to get to the unknown and you want to feel uncomfortable within it, because it's that mauri within the unknown that, you know, gets your those butterflies in your puku, and me and Sophia have felt that to an extent that it was scary. But now that we're getting better at this practice and more articulate with the process, we search for that because we navigate it with safety. So those would be my, I guess, the observations from working across from being a practitioner through to being a coach, is there's a range of positives, and if you do it right, it's an incredible thing, like what we've just heard from the two ladies. But often we go into it with the same fixed mindset that we've always been working in, and we don't do enough on switching our ideas to be growth driven, and to be how do we add value at multiple layers of the process. So koina tāku.
Awesome insights. And I think, again, really important to take into consideration how to, as in your first slide, Rangimārie, you had like this really hard out squiggle, which is the uncomfortable piece, or that it's never really a linear process working with our whānau. It's a step, it's a roller coaster, it's around and around. And as you said, the importance of being able to step into your own self, and who you are being when you are working directly with whānau, and being okay and comfortable to traverse the unknown. You can't quite see the horizon, and rather than drive for a horizon, you're actually allowing the process to unfold in partnership with the whānau that you're serving. So beautiful insight, and really, really helpful, I think, for all of us to consider the impact of doing things differently to get a much more impactful outcome, which I also believe is much more sustainable and cognizant of the ecosystem that we are all a part of within our communities. So, korua, Sophia, Crystal, for you, perhaps what are your top two whakaaro and around the key learnings and also the key challenges that you're facing in the sector that you're operating in?
Oh, kia ora anō. I also forgot to mention that two of the guys that I've been Aotea were going to co-present, and they are unfortunately doing their mahi in the Housing First team, so they couldn't be here. I just like to reiterate, I guess, what Rangimārie was talking about, that it can be a really scary, and it can be really uncomfortable, and that is where the magic is. It is in that scary and uncomfortable space. So just kind of, it's important when you're leading these processes, particularly when you're doing it with whānau, to hold that space, and to be cognizant that people are feeling that, and when people are feeling that, that's where it can get it can be challenging. So just recognizing that it can be uncomfortable, it can be scary, but holding that space is really important. Yeah. Crystal?
Yeah, I actually agree with everything that's been said. I don't even know if there's anything to say really, but there is a term that like co-design has actually taught me heaps about myself, and there's a term that I always use before entering a space, and it's kia whakatika koe ia koe, you know, fix yourself first, and ensuring that when we go into these spaces, we come in as a blank canvas, and you know, it is about holding that space and being that potoko manawa, because some of the insights that are shared, they do make you feel uncomfortable, but like Sophia was saying, that is where all the magic is, and not being able to, being strong enough to not hold those insights emotionally, and being able to, like Rangi's kōrero with the tukutuku, being able to, it's like that kōrero, those insights being woven through, and for you to reconstruct those, that kia coming through and feeding it back. So create that beautiful piece. I think one of the barriers is probably that notion of time, and being able to give ourselves more time to ensure that the kōrero, that we are putting mana to the kōrero that whānau are providing us, that we're giving that mana to those insights and those trusting spaces that they've allowed us into. And also understanding that what might work for whānau from the hokianga won't necessarily work for whānau from Ngāti Kahungunu. So it's being able to be flexible and comfortable in that space, that what we are creating is actually for that particular rōpū, or for those whānau that have those experiences, and it's not necessarily going to work for everybody else. But koira noiho.
Oh, kia ora koutou. And, you know, as a practitioner, as you say, being able to traverse. So in essence, as a facilitator of change, in particular transformative change, the ability to be able to hold space, the ability to be able to hold the mana or the integrity of the people that you're working with. But I also appreciate the comment about koha and the ability to contribute to the gifts that our whānau bring to the space, rather than using them as data sets that we're extracting information from, but they are actually whole beings with wairua, with a whānau, with a lived experience that is valuable. And needs to be protected and enhanced, and especially when we're working on the edges of community. But we also are aware that this mahi and this style of approach can work across sectors and the corporate world, social services, and entrepreneurship and business. So great insights from all of you. Now, mindful that we've got around 10 minutes left today, whānau, we've got some comments from our whānau on Facebook. Some of them here, Gary says, thank you for giving some insight into the unknown and becoming comfortable and open to change. So he acknowledges the three of you for your mahi. Lia is saying that she's really grateful for using the appreciative inquiry, asset-based development, non-deficit thinking approach, which I think at its core is looking for the good in people and the natural resources that exist within them, and working from that base. So that's really, really helpful. And she's using that approach to solve real-life problems in her mahi. And there's a pātai that I think we'll end this piece on, from Kelly. She's asking from all of you, how have you kept your lived experience and your whānau safe throughout the project? So again, just in regards to their wairua, their particular safety, how are you navigating that, or how have you done that safely? So maybe one of you might be able to answer that pātai for us, please.
I'll go. That was a really important part of our mahi, and we actually asked the guys. So we used our own philosophy of working with whānau and ensuring that their voice is heard, and found out what helps them to keep safe. And so with them we came up with the process, and it was exactly some of the stuff that I talked about. So after hui, we would have debriefs. After interviews we would have debrief. Before interviews we would do karakia, and so it was really them leading that process. And I think it's important that when you are working with whānau, you check in with them about what works for them and what has worked for them in the past to keep them safe.
Can I add, also as a practitioner, there's a really important practice in keeping yourself safe as well, that you are receiving information that is quite hurtful at times, quite hard to, like Crystal said, you have to be really careful not to take it on emotionally and to carry that. So there is, I absolutely agree with Sophia in that our communities, our whānau, the people with true lived experience, set those parameters. As a co-designer, you've got just as much responsibility, kia whakatika I a koe, to make sure that the space for yourself is safe, because it does push you, and just when you think you've got a really good sense of empathy, something will come along and really push that understanding of self. So yeah, you're of no use to the communities or the people you serve if you don't look after yourself through this process. And that's really something that when I'm working within projects, it's one of the first things that I work on is the co-designers themselves, to be able to maintain and hold that space for longevity over time, and through some pretty hard lived experiences.
Awesome. Oh, kia ora koutou. Hey, look, thank you so much. And aroha mai, we've got about 5 minutes left, because we're mindful that after such a fantastic hikoi for all of us, we also have some resources and information, so that one, you can stay connected to the mahi. For any of you that wish to actually have a session, Jan is actually just going to give us an insight into the resources and potential next steps for this mahi. So mai I tōku ngākau kia koutou, ngā wahine toa, ngā mihi kaua te kia koutou, kia koutou ngā whānau. Thank you so much, and I'm going to pass it back to you, Jan. Kia ora.
Oh, kia ora, Kaye-Maree, and tautoko te io kupu, tuatahi ngā mahine atu ki a koe, te tuahine e te whānau o community research. Thanks for joining us today, Friday before the long weekend. Thanks for taking time out of your day. And i ngā wahine ngākau, my goodness, I've been goosebumping meke your pūrākau. Your expertise that you've shared with us today has been profoundly moving, the humanity and also the disciplines around your work. And with the disciplines in mind, usually around now, what we do is we share some practical resources with you. Rangimārie, I'm going to ask you to unmute, because we're not quite there yet. I'm going to share the page where you'll find our co-design resources, and we're going to send this link to you on Monday. We'll probably add a few more. And as I pull this screen up, Rangimārie, maybe you would talk to us and say, for people who are relatively new to this practice, where do we find resources? Where can we find out some more tools, some more approaches that will link with our work?
I think what you've got there is a good platform. One thing that helped me was some really clear kind of workshop-based things that the D-School and Stanford provide, and I'm really I'm really aware that is comes from a certain worldview, but what it does do is it just gives you some practical platforms to then take the tools, adapt them, and make sure that you're building off a platform that is quite clear. So they do a great bootcamp style thing, and they've got some really easy step through things, but I wouldn't let that tool define your practice. I wouldn't let any tools define your practice. I would use them with a critical eye as well. maybe some of the Sophia, can you talk about some resources you guys have used in your...
Great, and then we'll come back to me. I don't know if you just lost your sound there, Rangi, but we'll come back to me and I'll share some practical pages from our own web-based resources. Have we lost sound?
Oh no, me? I think also connecting with people who are already doing this work is really important. So in Tāmaki, you've got the Auckland Co-Design Lab, the Southern Initiative, who are driving a lot of this stuff in Manukau. You've got people within your local councils who are doing a lot of this mahi. So connecting with people who are doing this work. And Ngā Aho, they now built a co-design component into their network. So they're a really good resource as well for connecting with people.
Kia ora. And Kaye-Maree, I don't want to bring my... Kaye-Maree, do you mind if I just wrap now? And what I might do is link us back into community research resources and to say, there is, if we can just screen share me, David, there is particularly one resource that I want to bring up for you. This is an important piece of work for us, Community Researchers Code of Practice. We've heard a lot about the importance of relationship and getting your relationship with your people right before you even embark upon the co-design process or even as part of your co-design process. This document was written in 2008 with particular input from Robin Kāmera and the board and some key, sort of the wider whānau of community research. And it's a place where you'll find some benchmark guidelines for undertaking your research journey in a way that is collaborative with community and which sets in place good relations to your community, including from a Western worldview and from a Māori values perspective as well. So I do recommend this to you. We're going to circulate this with our email on Monday. And also David is shortly going to take us to a 3-minute video about the What Works website. So you'll see here the links to What Works. This is a place to find tools and resources to help you with your research and your evaluation and your evidencing and your data gathering, including co-design with communities. If you don't mind, I'll just wrap, Kaye-Maree, and say it's been a tremendous pleasure and it's been an absolute honor sitting here as Pākehā, having been invited into this space, which is essentially a Māori to Māori conversation to talk about Māori co-design and what this means for you, as Kaye-Maree says, you stunning wahine on your journey. And it makes me mindful of the topic of our next webinar, which will be presented by Jen Margaret. And she's talking about how organizations are implementing and working with Treaty of Waitangi processes and values in their organisation. We're proud to be able to present this to you. E te whānui o community research working with your mahi up and down Aotearoa as another resource that will help you on your way. So I'll be distributing resources to you hopefully on Monday morning, and that will include a recording of today. And we look forward to seeing you on the 20th of November for our next webinar about the Treaty of Waitangi. How is your organisation faring on its treaty voyage? We're going to jump onto Facebook now. We'll be there to answer more questions from you. Thank you for taking time out in your day today. E te whānau, tēnei te mihi atu ki a koutou katoa, tēnā rā koutou katoa.